Hello, welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Becca, and today I have my January wrap-up. Also, I'm sorry if the lighting's weird. I don't normally like to film with artificial lighting, but I have a subscription box order that I need to fulfill this weekend, and in the UK at the minute it's dark from like 4 o'clock when I get home from work, so I have no other choice but to film with a lamp if I don't want YouTube to suffer at the expense of this subscription box. So if you remember my December wrap up, I had a terrible reading month and I only read 2 books, and I can happily say that this month has been a really good reading month for me, but only in quantity and not so much quality. So in January I read a total of 8 books, which came to 3,058 pages. I read 1 adult book, 6 YA and 1 non-fiction, but unfortunately for me the ratings weren't that high this month, and I read 2 2-star books, 3 3-star books, 2 4-star books and just 1 5-star. The 5-star as well was a non-fiction, so I didn't feel like I could rate it on enjoyment, and I rated it on the quality of information I felt that it provided me with. So even the 1 5-star that I did have wasn't rated on enjoyment. So as usual, I'm going to start with the first book that I read in January and end with the last one I read. And the first book that I read was Finale by Becca Fitzpatrick, which I gave 4 stars. I don't really have too much to say about this. It's a complete guilty pleasure read for me, and I understand that it is not a great work of literature, nor will it ever be, but I enjoyed it. I like the characters, I really like Patch. I think it was a good conclusion to the series and it redeemed itself from the 3rd book. Although, speaking on the series as a whole, I don't think that 3rd book should have existed. It was really, really bad. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Next up, I read My Second Life by Faye Bird. I gave this one 3 stars. This is a story about a girl who has lived before, so she's been reincarnated. And when she's visiting her grandma in hospital, she sees another patient that she remembers from her previous life. And the weird thing about this book is that the main character remembers things from her past life. So she doesn't consider her mum in her second life to be her mum. She considers her original mum to be her mum, to the point where she calls her second life mother by her name and not mum. This is a young adult thriller and I found it to be quite predictable. While I did enjoy it and it was very fast paced and I read it in 2 sittings, I thought that it left a lot unwrapped, like why the girl has been reincarnated, because this is more of a magical realism where nobody else has been reincarnated, just this girl, assumedly for a specific reason, but that's never explained in the book. So I did deduct a couple of stars for that. It was enjoyable, but ultimately I think it's forgettable, which is why I only gave it 3 stars. Next up, I read Starlings by Jo Walton. This was an arc from NetGalley, and I gave this one 3 stars again. This is a collection of short stories and poetry by the author Jo Walton, who is a novelist. However, I have never read anything else by her. They are all fantasy or sci-fi based. There are a couple of standout stories in this. One that I really enjoyed is called Senile Visited by Aliens, and that one is about an old lady in a nursing home who says that she's been visited by aliens and that they're taking her, or somebody's taking her things and moving them around, and she's recording things into a voice recorder so that she doesn't forget because she has dementia. It's about her recounting a conversation she had with an alien. Very ironic because as the old lady has dementia, you're not sure as a reader whether or not to believe her. Has she been visited by aliens? Is it just a side effect of her dementia? But I thought it was very touching and kind of sad, and I really enjoyed that one. There was also one called On the Wall, which was a Snow White Evil Queen origin story retelling from the perspective of the magic mirror. I really like this one because of the unique perspective of the magic mirror having a personality and telling the story. I also really enjoyed one called Parable Lost, which is about a man walking down the beach and he stops to throw in some jellyfish that are stranded, and a woman called Eve, the man's called Adam, comes across him and asks what he's doing, and he tells her, and she asks him why he's doing it because he can't make a difference. And then she wanders off and she thinks about all the ways he could make a difference or he couldn't make a difference. For example, she could just walk off and never go back. She could come back with a truck and help him scoop jellyfish into the sea. She could stand on the beach with him and throw them in. And yeah, I just really liked that one. While there were some that I really enjoyed, I didn't really care for the poetry at all, and some of the short stories were really lost on me, or I just didn't enjoy them. I know one that I really didn't enjoy had sort of newspaper articles in, and I just really didn't understand it at all. I didn't understand the underlying message of the short story. So overall I would say it was average. The way that I worked out the rating for this is I added up the total number of stars divided by the number of stories, and it came out with like 3.3, so I gave it 3 stars. So there's an equal number of stories that I liked and disliked. Then, as part of my Goodreads to read shelf clear out challenge, I read Divergent by Veronica Roth, and I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the plot. At the minute, I'm not too sure why everybody hates Tris, because while I don't love her or necessarily like her as in go out of my way to say I like Tris, I didn't find her annoying. A lot of people say she has no personality, but I haven't really been thinking that while I've been reading it. So yeah, I did really like this. However, I did have a couple of problems with it. For those of you who don't know, this is a story in a dystopian world. It's a young adult dystopian where the society has been split into factions by the faction founders, who decided that to save humanity they would split into different sectors. So the people who blamed like violence for humanity being a lost cause started a faction called Amity, who are peaceful and they grow the food and they don't believe in war or fighting. And the people who believed that lies were the reason for the downfall of humanity formed a faction about truth. Essentially, when you turn 16, you have a test to sort you into your faction, and there are a small amount of the population that are divergent, and Tris herself is one, the main character. It's dangerous to be a divergent because if you don't fit into a certain box, you can be controlled. So she's essentially undercover. Well, not undercover, but she's hiding as a divergent in Dauntless, which are the strong, powerful warrior types of this world, and trying not to let anyone know that she's divergent. So the problems that I had, the main love interest in this is called Four, and he is part of the Dauntless, the warrior type group, and he's a trainer and he trains the initiates that are transferring from other factions. He shows Tris a lot of attention. More attention than he shows any other initiates, obviously because he's the love interest, but there's this big deal about the Dauntless leaders don't want them to be together, like that it must be wrong because she's not a full member yet, she hasn't passed the trials, and so they keep the relationship a secret. Yet the Dauntless common area and the headquarters is described as chaotic and rowdy on multiple occasions, but Tris and Four sneak around together at night in the open areas holding hands and stuff and spending a lot more time one-on-one just talking than anybody else does. I feel like it's unrealistic to expect me to believe that at these times that they were walking around holding hands there was literally nobody else in the Dauntless common areas, because Dauntless don't follow rules, so they would be out at night if they wanted to be. It's not unreasonable. The other problem that I had is just a niggly thing, and it's towards the end when the main thing's going down and something traumatic happens to Tris, and she sort of has a breakdown and she screams and she cries, and then 20 pages on, it's sort of Tris is in a monologue and she says something like, I haven't had time to break down or scream or even sob. And I was like, but you did do that. Like, I read it. I know that you did. So that was just a little niggly thing that annoyed me, but I thought it was worth mentioning. So the next book that I read was 13 Reasons Why by J. Asher. And I actually started this in October, or no, I think I started it in November. And it wasn't on my January TBR, and that is because the reason I was watching it is because I was watching the TV show on Netflix, so I would watch an episode of the show and then read a chapter of the book. I gave this 2 stars, and I dislike the show and the book for different reasons, but I do dislike them both, but I do prefer the show to the book. So if you don't know, 13 Reasons Why is about a girl called Hannah Baker who has committed suicide, and before she does, she records 13 tapes about 13 people and why they've played a part in her killing herself. The subject matter is problematic to start off with, there's no denying that. The thing that I didn't like about the book is that, unlike the show, where Clay tries to find redemption for Hannah, and it feels like he cares about Hannah and the things that people have done to Hannah are wrong, in the book he doesn't do anything to stop it or change it or make things right, so I really didn't like that. And without going into spoilers, I don't like the way that rape is portrayed and used in this book to almost further the plot. I feel like it is treated as a way to develop Hannah's character, and the way that Hannah herself approaches the situation that she's put in is wrong and shouldn't be in a book aimed at teenagers. And another thing that leads on from that, well, it's sort of both points tied together, I don't like the fact that Clay knew that this had happened to her and did nothing about it. Next was my non-fiction book, and that was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematorium by Caitlin Doughty. Now, Caitlin Doughty is the person behind Ask a Mortician, the YouTube channel, which I really enjoy. Now, this is obviously about her being a mortician and some of the things that she's experienced, how she got into the death industry, how she's built her way up to where she is today, struggles that she's had working in the death industry, sort of little anecdotes about funny things that happened while she worked there. In some parts I found this a little difficult to read. Obviously death is a strong topic to be reading about, but I did find it funny and Caitlin's personality really came across in this book. So I did give this one 5 stars. If I rated it on enjoyment I would probably have given it 4, but I personally know nothing about the death industry before this and before watching her channel, so because I can't say that the information in this is incorrect or misleading or irrelevant, I gave this 5 stars because I personally felt that the quality of information presented in this book was good. Obviously this isn't a book for everyone, but if you enjoy just learning about new things like me, I'm a little bit desensitized to serious subject matters, so I can read this pretty much no problem. And I can also watch her channel. It doesn't send me into like a breakdown or a thought spiral about death and make me upset and things like that. So if you're like me and that you just like to learn things and be entertained, I would highly recommend Caitlin's channel and also this book. Next, I read Insurgent by Veronica Roth, which is the second book in the Divergent trilogy. I gave this one 3 stars. Obviously, I can't tell you what this one's about because it's a sequel. Essentially, the reason why this got 3 stars while the first book got 4 is that I really like the overarching plot through this, but I felt that this was very drawn out, even to the point where I'm starting the 3rd book now, and I think that maybe this book wasn't necessary, or it could have, like the last 2 could have been condensed into 1 book, because the only important thing that comes out of this is the big reveal at the end. So the reason I gave this 3 stars is because I felt that it was much too long. I wasn't really interested until halfway through the book, and there are also a lot of characters. This is a series where people do die, and I feel like to compensate the fact that there are a lot of deaths, there are a lot of characters. So you'll start with a group of people. This happened in the first book as well. So you start with a group of people, some will die, more characters will be brought in, then a few more will be brought in so some can die. It's sort of like The Walking Dead if you watch that. So they started with a small group, then they went to the farm and got a bigger group so most of them could die, and then they went to the prison and got a bigger group so most of them can die, and you still have enough characters to make a book. The main problem that I had with there being a lot of characters is that a lot of them were indistinguishable from each other, and so when one of them died I was like, is this the one that's dating that guy, or is this the one that helped Tris do that? Like, I couldn't remember who was who. I know 2 characters in particular that I won't name were friends, so they were always together. They were both females and I couldn't remember which one was which. So when one of them died, I was like, I don't even know which one this is. And the last book that I read this month is probably the worst, and that is White Cat by Holly Black. I gave this 2 stars. This is the first book in the Curse Workers series, but I won't be continuing with the series. This is about a guy called Cassell who murdered his girlfriend when he was 14. You are in a world where curse workers exist, and they, from what I can gather, they are people that have sort of powers, and if they touch you like with their hand on your skin, they can curse you. They're not all curses. So the entire society wears gloves. There's also consequences to using this magic. So for example, if you're a death worker, you can kill people with a touch, but parts of your own body die as a result of that. So this is the second Holly Black book I've read, and I don't think I'll be reading another one. The first one was The Darkest Part of the Forest. I also gave that 2 stars, and I read that back in 2015. But I thought that that could have been because it was the book I read directly after A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I thought maybe I was being a little harsh because I thought A Court of Thorns and Roses was better and they were both about Faye, and that I should give Holly Black another chance because everyone seems to love her. But unfortunately, I didn't like this either. I find Holly Black's writing style to be quite simplistic and not descriptive enough. At the beginning of this, you were just thrown into the world. There is like zero world building, so you don't know what's going on, don't know what workers are. Like on the first page it says something about him not being a worker, and you're like, but what's a worker? And then by the time you figure it out, you've forgotten all of the intricacies of the plot that happened earlier on because you didn't know what was going on. And I don't even think that this world was fully developed by the time I got to the end of it. I also have zero attachment to the characters in this. The plot resolution seemed to happen all very conveniently, which I did notice about the darkest part of the forest as well. And overall, I just think that the writing, Holly Black's writing style isn't for me. If I think about it, I do like the bare bones of her plot and the ideas that she has, but the way that she brings it to life in her writing style is just not really to my taste. So that wraps up everything that I read in January. I hope you liked this video. If you have read any of these books, then please pop a comment down below or tell me your best and worst book that you read in January. Please don't forget to like if you liked this, and also subscribe if you want to. Also, if you head down into the down bar, you can find a link to my Instagram, my Twitter and my Goodreads if you'd like to follow me on any of those. But that's everything from me today. Bye!